There are three areas that we're going to talk about today at the panel. The first is the impact of AI on society as a whole. The second, the impact at the university. And then third, the ethical and responsible use of AI. Because as with any powerful technology, there are dual use, there are good sides and bad sides to it. So with that, I'm going to do a little icebreaker question for our panelists. What was your aha moment with AI? The first time that you truly understood this was not just an innovation, but the innovation, the defining achievement of the decade and possibly the century.
Okay, thank you. That's a big question. I would say maybe there was like a small moment and a bigger moment. So maybe like 10 years ago when deep neural networks, deep learning really became popular, the technology became sufficiently advanced that we could use it, in many settings. Me as a database person, right, so managing all the data, this was really transformational because now we could really extract information from videos, from images in a way that was efficient and that was really powerful, and therefore open up all of this data for querying as opposed to focusing really on kind of tabular data, which was our focus in the past. So that was just like, in my world of data management. But I would say more recently, honestly, when seeing some of the early demos of GPT-4, where you see GPT-4 like generating, answers to questions and code and generating images and generating SQL queries. Then the speaker was like, "Ooh, this is artificial general intelligence," and I'm like, "Okay, I don't think so," but this is a form of very powerful pattern matching, but it really works. Like this is this is really powerful. This is going to be really effective, something we can use in many different settings. So this really made it seem like, okay, this is really transformational because it's going to impact everyone because it's such a useful tool now.
Thanks. I have two. One is a little bit more humorous than the other. So I was with my children who were showing me how GPT can do a anniversary card in wrap. And I said, well, I'm going to test this out. So I did one of my questions that I would use for one of my residents, which is give me a differential diagnosis for a patient who comes in with the sclera, which is the normal white part of the eye, being green. Sure enough, ChatGPT spit out the correct three answers. So that was pretty impressive. And then the second time that was really a revelation for me was that I was in a board meeting with a consultant presenting on how we're going to turn around the financial system of the hospital with 6 outline items that we were going to do. And I promptly put the question to GPT, and it generated the exact same 6 things that were being presented by our consultant. Pretty interesting.
I think for me, it was when I saw the demo of GPT-4o, multimodal integration, where the person was talking with it, and then it really seemed like there was a person in the phone, and then they were like moving the camera around and then showing the video, and then GPT was answering all these questions really well. And then I think that's when I realized that maybe this was like something more than just a regular new tech. It might be something more interesting and then something more revolutionary.
Thank you, Sam. For me, it's very close to home. I remember my daughter doing homework, and she was having a conversation with her computer, and I thought she was in a Zoom meeting or Teams meeting or whatever. And I noticed that she wasn't. So after a while, I asked her, I said, who are you talking to? And she was having a conversation with her course material, meaning the data set were the curriculum for her particular class. And she was sitting down and just having a conversation with the curriculum. And she was asking questions, she was getting answers, she asked for clarification of technical terms, and it was just this conversation back and forth. And I was, wow, that is different. And I also think, bringing that close to UW, there are so many opportunities here to leverage these tools in an ethical way. The last example I will share is I received a text from our president, Anna Mari. It was a poem. It was a poem about our mission statement, and it was written in the voice of Dr. Seuss. And I think that's when I knew that this is serious business.
Right. Excellent. Okay, so first theme, the impact of AI on society. Magda, what do you see as the most significant recent breakthrough in AI? How might that shape the field's trajectory? And what potential breakthroughs and achievements do you think are coming in the future?
All right, thank you. Well, but I would say, I think exactly as we've heard in this icebreaker, I think it's pretty clear that large language models and these large multimodal models looking at both images, text, really this is just a huge breakthrough. And I think at this point we're all seeing it. And part of the reason why it's so transformational is because it's not a technology that's a very narrow focus, but because the applicability is so broad, right? From, poems to course materials, to doing something in kind of all kinds of other domains. And so in terms of next steps, I think this is really to the imagination of everyone, whether, at UWIT thinking, okay, how can we apply it here at the university, all the way to researchers in any field who are thinking, okay, how can this new tool really be powerful in my domain? So it will be exciting to see what comes out in the next 3 years.
All right. So Sam, students today will be entering a very different world as they graduate and enter the workforce. There is concern that advances in AI will cause a wave of unemployment, especially in knowledge work jobs. How do we prepare students and employers for these changes? And what can we do today to prepare the next generation workforce?
I asked this question myself quite a bit as I'm a senior now, rising senior. So I'm hoping that they won't replace me, but I say we need to understand that for students, I think AI has only been like a new topic in the past 2 years with the opening of ChatGPT and on, I think, 2022, late 2022. So it's only been around 2 years since people have really started to wonder if AI will replace humans in workflows. And on top of that, I think companies have only started commercializing AI models in the past year with Microsoft Copilot and GPTs and Claude AI, Adobe AI, stuff like that in the past year. So what I'm trying to say is that I don't think that right now we can really see how this technology will affect the future in the near term or in the far future because it's only been out a year or so. But I think, personally, I don't think that AI in this model will replace humans completely. And this is twofold. First of all, I think that AI models are prone to hallucinations, and that when you have, let's say, a 14 million line database, you can't just pay attention to ChatGPT and ask for a new answer. What if there's an error on the line, 13,477 that has a logical error, and then you can't really check that out. So humans are needed at every level to make sure that we have strict, correct answers. And secondly, I think all of the models out there right now, stuff like that, as I mentioned, Microsoft Copilot or ChatGPT chatbots or any other Adobe AI and stuff like that, they're tools to be used by humans, but not to be replaced humans. I think that's important to remember.
Yeah, please. Thanks for that, Sam. So as you have navigated these past 4 years, so in November of 2022, I think ChatGPT really kind of became available. What changes have you seen in the student body in particular in regards to these new tools? Are they excited about it? Is it a nothing story? What's the consensus across campus?
Since I'm a CS major, I think I'm a lot of my friends or cohorts have been using it for coding tasks. I think for classroom examples, a lot of my friends have been using ChatGPT to maybe ask example questions. For example, instead of studying by themselves, they can ask ChatGPT generate me 4 questions on this topic, and then they can answer that question, and then hopefully it's not hallucinating, so get the right answer. But overall, I think it's very revolutionizing how people can study in the good way.
Thank you. All right. So any other thoughts from our panel on the impact of AI on society?
For me, I put this akin, and I'm old enough to do this, to say that I think this is akin to the internet and how that changed our society. You think about when the internet came to fruition, and really fruition once, a web browser was created in around 95, 94, somewhere around there. People were like, oh, well, that's interesting. Maybe we can have some neighborhood chats or something else like that. Nobody was thinking, this is how I'm going to order groceries. And over a prolonged period of time, 10, 15, 20 years, we've really seen what the internet has done is transformed every single aspect of society. And I think the AI will do the same thing, but I think the window of which that will occur is going to be even shorter than the window that we saw with the internet.
Yeah, thank you. So actually, I could not agree more. And I think specifically to the point of jobs changing or being replaced, one thing is that with us humans, we're all incredibly creative and we like to keep ourselves busy. And every time, even if I think about home, right? Like I have a machine to wash my laundry. I have a robot to do, my vacuum cleaning. It doesn't mean like I have nothing to do. There's so many things to be done. And I think it's the same with our jobs. Like if we all think about our current jobs and all the most tedious part of it, and if we could automate some of those tedious parts, there's so much more that we could all be doing. And I think part of what's exciting about AI is that it kind of has that promise of, supporting us with additional tedious tasks and giving us more time to do even more for our customers, for the students, for the university, with the time that is going to be freed up. And I do agree that I think it's a lot kind of like the web. And if we think about how this has transformed, then yes, some maybe things we used to do, we no longer need to do. Some jobs have been changed, but there's just so many other things. Like I said, people are really creative and they know how to keep busy. So I think there's just kind of a lot of opportunities that are going to open up for us.
Excellent. There have been a number of people who have said AI is electricity 2.0, that it is that profound and that we have only begun to find the things that it can do. When Edison got the light bulb to work, he could not have envisioned the iPhone 15 or 16. What do you think about that? Is it too extreme? Is it too optimistic, too grandiose? Or do you think that this might be that profound in its long-term impact on civilization?
I think two things. One is we need to be careful. We need to have some understanding of what AI actually is. It's not magic. It's just statistics. And for you in this room, that may be easy to understand. I think for the general population, that's actually a big thing to understand. And the second thing I think we need to focus on is that it's probably not the solution for everything. There is a lot that can be done very efficiently with ways that we are already doing things, that adding AI to it really is not going to give you any incremental benefit. And so I think we're going to have to figure out where is it really important and where is it not. And if we do that well and we take advantage of using it in the areas where it's really important, this is going to be like Moore's law for chips, right? You're going to get forget it. What's the name of the curve? Exponential. Thank you. It's been a long time since undergrad. An exponential curve in how we advance all kinds of different areas in society.
I think I agree with Todd in that we have to be careful, first of all, right? This, as we dig into AI about what it really is, like you just said, statistics. And I think this crowd also understands that better. But I also personally, like from Andreas's perspective, I'm on the fence. I think it's electricity 2.0, but I think it's too soon to tell. I think the application of this and that exponential curve that you mentioned, Todd, I think we're going to discover really what this is about in the future, and pretty soon. Excellent. Thank you very much. All right. At this point, we're going to move on to the second theme, AI at the University of Washington.
which hopefully will be of interest to all of you. So first, Andreas, the Provost launched an AI task force in February. Can you give us an update on the outcomes from that effort and what to expect in the months ahead? How do we plan to become a world leader in artificial intelligence?
Well, first, I will just say that we are already a world leader in artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence as an academic domain has been around since the 1950s. And we are well established as a powerhouse in artificial intelligence. We see that all across our campuses. But more specifically to the task of the AI task force, we have worked together over several months. There was working groups put together over 5 domains. It was student, teaching and learning, research, administration, and infrastructure. And infrastructure was always kind of visualized as supporting those other 4 domains. There was an executive committee, and Magda was a great contributor to that committee. And I think that together, and because of this hard work, we have a bold and compelling vision for AI at the University of Washington. And we are right at the cusp of communicating what that bold and compelling vision looks like. There is an engagement strategy that is currently underway. And within the next several weeks, that's going to start to roll out to the broader campus, because the work of the AI task force was not the end. It was the beginning. So we have to engage with the campus. We have to listen to feedback. And I would expect to course correct on this broader vision as we learn more together. There's some initial investments that we are looking at, both when it comes to enabling faculty to do more amazing things with AI, to shoring up our infrastructure, because as you know, this is going to take a lot of additional horsepower to work. I don't want to share too much of the details on this plan, in that the communications is coming out pretty soon, but I am excited about it, and it's really thanks to the work of that AI task force, the working groups. Many of you served on that, and I think it's going to be great.
It is. I've seen it. All right, Magda, so you were on the panel, or on the task force, and you're also on the state task force for AI. Are we all pulling in the same direction?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So in the state of Washington, we also have a new bill was passed to create a Washington State AI Task Force. And the goal of that Washington State AI Task Force, I think, is really nicely complementary to the University of Washington Task Force. The University of Washington Task Force, we really looked at the University of Washington. How can we use AI? How can we, educate our students? How can we do great things, for towards our mission of preserving, advancing, and disseminating knowledge? For the state of Washington, some of the questions are around regulation. So how do we make sure that we use AI in a responsible manner, that we advance AI in a responsible manner? There's also questions around education and workforce development. Actually, I happen to chair that subcommittee, which I think is the most exciting subcommittee, because I just keep saying we should invest in education in AI. So kind of also providing these types of recommendations. And there's a lot of overlap, thinking, for example, around infrastructure, around education, around upskilling. So I think it's kind of nice and complementary, but looking at this, different levels, which is what does AI mean for the university, and how do we maintain our leadership and advance it? Or what does AI mean for the state of Washington, and how do we make sure we have responsible use of AI, responsible advances here, and also kind of advice on how do we invest in this new field.
Excellent.
Thanks for that, Magda. And thank you for serving on both task force. I know that's a lot of time, but we appreciate it very much. As we look at AI at the University of Washington, and Magda, to your point about how to leverage it within the university, I know that from a STEM perspective, everyone is all in, right? Sam, you were talking about how, computer science and everyone is using it. What are your thoughts, Magda, on the more non-STEM domain, if you will, the humanities, and how do you think AI could be implemented there? Do you have any thoughts on that?
So I would say that there's a couple of interesting perspectives. One, thinking about outside of the university, I think like you were saying, like to us in this crowd, we kind of have a sense of AI and the fact that it's looking at data and, extracting patterns, looking at statistics, etc. So kind of a very useful tool. Outside, some people do worry about it. And some people might try to make statements like, we should just not do it at all. And I think to some extent, it's a natural reaction to any kind of change that, change can be scary. So people can have these reservations. But there's also a lot of excitement for people in all kinds of domains because they can also see applications in domains outside of STEM. So I think kind of from outside of the university, we're kind of seeing both people who are cautious and worried and people who are also excited. Within the university, actually one really exciting thing about AI in its current embodiment, right, with those large language models is that it actually doesn't require technical skills to interact with it. It doesn't require kind of STEM technical skills to study it. We can study it from the technical perspective like we will do maybe in computer science, but people can also study it from, all the kind of humanities perspective and social perspectives and the law. So I think it's actually super exciting bringing campus together around this subject with all the different units being able to contribute to advancing that knowledge from their perspective.
So it's been said that natural language is the new programming language. And that is really transformative if you think about it, because it means everyone can be a programmer.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment something on Magda that you just said, and that is, we know when we get on social media that there's spoofs and all kinds of craziness out there on social media, and I think the general public has a reasonable understanding that everything that they see on Facebook is not the truth. I think that's going to be more of a challenge with AI. And the reason is that the statistical model is trying to get you close, not to get you off in left field. And so it becomes much more challenging to try and understand truth and close to truth, and being able to separate those two things out. And I think one of the things I'd like to charge you all with is there is no better group of people to explain this to the non-STEM people about that difference and what to be aware of, how to take advantage of some of that, because sometimes what you want is just something close enough to truth. But I think it's a really important issue and a mission that you all should embrace.
All right. So the next question for Todd, what are the key areas UW Medicine should be focused on right now in the AI space, and how are they being pursued? And is there one area that you're really focused on?
So I'm going to apologize up front that this is a little bit of a longer answer. So I'm going to take you back to ancient times in IT world, which is 2 years ago. We met with Dean Bellett, who's the dean of the School of Medicine, and said, there's lots of stuff coming with this new thing called GPT, and we need a strategy here. And he's like, yeah, that's interesting. Well, we'll get back to you. And about 2 months later, we get an email from him saying, we need to meet about GPT. As Andreas can well attest, when you're at the top, all the emails float up to you. And so he was getting dozens and dozens of emails from people all across UW Medicine about what are we doing with this and what is our strategy and all this type of stuff. And so he chartered a committee back in 2023, early 2023, to try and come up with a strategy. And that group met and divided our work up into 3 areas. What is the utility of using AI? What are the risks of using AI? And how do we control the governance of AI and be able to integrate that into our already existing governance structure? So we had a small group of about 60 people on this committee, and we generated a very short 70-page white paper about this, which was then approved by the dean, and we created a work group on generative AI. That work group, of course, now has 7 sub-work groups, one on strategy, one on leadership and accountability, one on governance structure and future integration, one on policy, one on communications and education, one on risk assessment and one on operational implementation. The operational implementation has three further subgroups, one on clinical, one on research, and one on data standardization. And the reason I say that is it really does take a lot of planning and strategic design to figure out how you're going to take a tool this powerful and incorporate it into the type of work that you're going to do so that it is not a one-off, but it is actually a strategic plan of how you're going to take this technology and bring it into the workforce of what you are doing. Some specific things about the implementation thing that I think are useful that are not just applicable to UW Medicine, but also applicable to AI elsewhere, are that when we have a request for a new AI model being put in, we have lots of them. We have one that does prior authorizations for medications. We have one that does, I send a patient, the patient sends me a message, they have a question to their doctor. The answer to that is already sent to GPT and an answer is generated back as a draft for me to then work from. So this is, and those are live right now at UW Medicine. So there are lots of different ones that we're putting in place. And when we do that, we run through 6 different things to think about with those type of AI projects. And I think this is applicable, like I said, to not just UW Medicine, but AI in general. The first of those is really, what are the legal concerns with this, right? So for example, one of the things we have to deal with is you can't store data outside the United States on servers. And so those are questions that you have to ask about your AI vendors and your project. What are the compliance things that we have to do, both from privacy and HIPAA and all kinds of other things? I'm sure you all deal with compliance and regulatory issues, but is this project running afoul of any of those types of issues? What is the security? Question for you all, what is the most valuable commodity in the world? Data. It's like 5 times more valuable than all the oil in the world. Okay. So data security is really crucial. You all have seen the headlines of all the cyber attacks that are going on, both in the hospitals and other industries as well. But when you take this data, almost every single AI model is up in the cloud, and you better understand what the security is around the data that you're sending there. The third we touched on already is clinical utility. Is the AI the answer to what you're doing, right? So if I need to write a work excuse for somebody, I don't need AI to do that for me, right? So is it being used for something that really is needed? The fifth is it cost effective? Andreas will say, and you will hear lots of folks, that this ain't cheap. The cost for us for just one of our AI projects is estimated right now at about $5 million a year. So we need to make sure that these things have a return on investment, that it's getting adopted and used. It's not just being put out there and people go, yeah, that's nice, I never use it. So it has to be used, and when it's being used, it has to return either an efficiency or an improved employee satisfaction, so you have less burnout. All the typical things that we think about for return on investment need to be an integral part of the discussion with us. And then finally, the last piece that often gets lost is, what is the maintenance plan of this going to be? So, does the model change with time? One of the dangers of these things is that they are a static model, right? So if you think about, you had an AI model that was helping you predict diagnoses, how good would it have been for a patient who presents with a fever and a cough in February of 2020? All right. So all those things are things to think about with it. I hope that answers that.
Thank you. That's phenomenal. And by the way, UW Medicine is leading the world in this area. The work they are doing is incredible. They have a huge web presence. So if you're interested, they have a lot online you can read about. One of the things that we talk about is, vendors are scrambling to create
platforms that has AI embedded into it, right? Copilot comes to mind, Zoom comes to mind, Adobe, etc. I'm really interested on the medicine side and in the clinical side in particular. Are you seeing that integration? I'm thinking about Epic and platforms like that.
Yeah, it's a great point. Still on. It's a great point. There was an article that appeared in the New England Journal Catalyst edition from Kaiser, actually, here in Washington, on their use of a more earlier version of AI, what's called ambient AI, which is I turn my phone on as a microphone in the room and it listens to the conversation of the room between the patient and the physician and generates a note based upon that, and doesn't include things like the discussion of the Mariners game, but does include things that are important, like you lost vision in your left eye. And what they said was that, yeah, it's a great tool, but we only have 30% adoption. And they're like, seems like a great tool. Why do you only have 30% adoption? And the answer was, well, it's a separate app and it's not integrated into our electronic health record. So the integration piece is critical. Again, you're spending a lot of money on this for adoption, and so it needs to be integrated into the workflow. You cannot present AI as a feature. You have to present it as a way of doing something.
Excellent. All right. Now we move on to the third and final theme, the responsible, ethical, and appropriate use of AI. So this is for Sam and Magda, and of course, anyone else who wants to contribute. So Sam for the students and Magda for the faculty and staff. What is UW doing to prepare them for a world where AI is everywhere and an increasingly essential skill? How do we make sure no one gets left behind?
I think the university is always doing a very good job of promoting AI in many aspects, such as giving talks by industry experts and researchers, and by workshops hosted by the departments and the university as a whole. For example, I think last year there was a talk given by a researcher in OpenAI that came to University of Washington to just talk about AI and how he used it, basically solve various questions. And I think those things total, I think, really help students really understand how AI works and how to make sure AI is being useful. I think to make sure that every student gets a chance to hear this, I think one thing they can do is that I only learned about these talks and workshops through a remote research community. And for students that are not interested in research or maybe in a different field, they might not have the opportunity to access these talks and opportunities. So I think we can raise visibility and help all students have access to these new opportunities that the university is already offering.
Great, yeah, thank you. So I'm going to actually benefit from the fact that I'm far away from Andreas and he cannot reach all the way here and pull the mic. And I'm going to leak a few things from the task force report that you're planning. So especially around kind of, undergraduate, graduate student educations, there's a lot of things in the report around, we have a data science minor that could become a data science and AI minor, having a separate AI minor that has kind of no data science focus, but is purely AI, looking at micro-credentials, looking at different ways to bring in AI straight at the freshman level. At the graduate level, many of our units are developing AI certificates, and our hope, our vision is that it would be ideal if you could stack these certificates so that people can get a master's degree. So those are some of our plans going forward to bring this education to the undergraduate and graduate students. For upskilling the rest of us, we really want to build on the model we have used for data science through the eScience Institute. So our eScience Institute was founded in 2008. So it's our data science institute, but it predates the word data science, hence it's called eScience, but we kept our brand. And really kind of through that, over many years, we developed techniques around, having office hours, one-day workshops, two-day workshops, actually leading some of the data science program developments, having, 1 week long hackathons, having incubator programs. And we want to do some of kind of similar type of work to kind of help upskill our whole community. And more, if you find this all interesting, then please come to all the town halls we will have around what's in the report from the AI task force and what are some of our plans in this space. And thanks, Andrea, for not cutting me off.
Well, yeah, thanks for spilling the beans. The AI task force had a couple of really important tasks and framings that were really important to the university. And first of all, we are treating this as AI in the broadest sense. So this is not about just large language models, generative AI, right? This is truly AI as a science, including machine learning, and we talked about language processing and all those things. So it's really broad. And one of the things that we also discussed is that this needs to be equally broad across the university, meaning, just like Magda said, data science is a good example of how the university can do that because it doesn't sit in a particular school, college, or department. And we have to take the same approach when it comes to AI to ensure that there's equitable access to whatever we build and deliver to the University of Washington. And the last thing I will mention is, as you were talking, Magda, I remember a conversation I had with a faculty member not too long ago about what they saw as kind of the 3 core things that we need to do as a university. And they really resounded with me because they're super simple. The first one is advance research in artificial intelligence. The second is, to Sam's point, teach our students how to use artificial intelligence, again, in that broadest sense. And then third, apply AI ourselves into the processes and tools that we currently are using as a university. And I think that really frames it from that really broad perspective, in that, again, this should not belong to any unit, school, or department. Rather, it belongs to all of us.
Excellent. So a good follow-on question to that. What governance structures are we putting into place to ensure responsible and ethical use of AI at the university? How much emphasis did these topics receive in the AI task force?
Good question. AI governance was a primary topic as well for the AI task force. We, as you know, have a new information and technology governance model. It consists of an executive committee, and all senior leaders are currently on that executive committee. But again, that is information and technology. That word "and" is important because it's not IT governance, it's information and technology governance. So that structure already exists. So when we talked about AI, we asked ourselves, okay, do we need to stand up another governance model all by itself, or can we leverage some of the existing governance structure that we have in place in order to not build something new and add bureaucracy just for the sake of it? So Anand Dey, who is a professor and dean of the iSchool, he is my counterpart as the co-chair of the AI task force. We talked about this quite a bit. We engaged with the executive committee. We went back and forth around what this would look like. And as it stands right now, there will be a subdomain of the information and technology governance that is focused on AI oversight. Now, that is for the entire university, and that is a really important point. So we are changing the nature of information and technology governance by doing this, and we are adding faculty members to our executive committee to ensure that when we make decisions in this space, we are making them across the university, not just, again, a particular school or unit. The other piece that we quickly realized was we might not have all the answers. Yes, we are a world-known leader in AI, but this is all new. So we also have an external advisory council. We are still working on who is going to be on that and what its purpose is, but it's meant to sit in parallel with this new governance model to inform our decisions. There will be thought leaders, there will be researchers and faculty members from the UW on this committee. There will be third-party vendors on this committee to, again, help shape and inform our decisions that we are going to be making within the information and technology governance model within which AI now sits.
Excellent. Glad we're taking that seriously. That's obviously of the utmost importance. Okay, so the last question is for all of the panels. And this is, what would you like to tell us? What would you like to say? What are your closing thoughts about collaboration, cross-pollination, adoption, innovation? What's important to you?
Todd's looking at his notes, so I'm going to give it to him.
You get old, you need notes. Yeah. I think for me, the real key is there's a lot of hype about this. When there's a lot of hype around something, sometimes you don't follow necessarily the best processes. And I think that is probably the biggest risk right now. This has a wonderful potential and an incredible risk. I've been in health IT for 30 plus years, and every single time they introduce something new, it's to make it faster or better or easier to use. This is the first time we're interested in introducing a tool that can lie to us. And that's a, eye opener, right? So I think we need to be really cautious and do this the right way, which means you establish processes and you follow the processes, and you don't let people sideline and do things behind back doors, even though they want it yesterday. If you're testing something, you create a true pilot, not just a phase one, but you actually test it and evaluate it and see whether or not it's actually doing what you think it's doing and it's worth the money that you're spending on it. Then the last point, and I really appreciate this forum for that, is because of the speed at which this is going and the complexity of it, we need to benefit from shared lessons learned. And so whatever forum we can create here or ongoing, UW Medicine was happy to participate in some of that to let you know about some of the lessons that we've learned. And we want to learn from you all about the lessons that you've learned to be able to be efficient and safe in the path forward.
Even at an undergrad level, I think I can tell that the University of Washington is very focused and investing heavily in AI. And I think this is like Todd said, we have to keep the hype in check. But I think this is a great opportunity for the University of Washington to become the premier leader in AI technologies by collaboration and by strong focus in AI.
Thank you. So I would like to close by saying that I think it's just such an exciting time for UWIT. So people are talking about, AI being here, replacing jobs, but think about all the opportunities deploying those technologies across so many different aspects at the University of Washington, helping people with it. Like, who is the provider of technology and information services? It's UWIT. And I think this is just really a really, really exciting time.
Thanks for that plug, Magda. Appreciate that. Yeah. But that's it, right? We provide enterprise-wide information technology services to the university. So I encourage you, when you think about artificial intelligence and considering all the caveats that we talked about here today, right? We have to do this responsibly. We have to do this ethically. The hype that Sam just mentioned. But at the end of the day, we should filter this through our strategic plan, right? So when we talk about being a great place to work, about building you get me relationships with our partner stakeholders and customers, providing trusted solutions, and having a global impact. AI is embedded in all four of those statements. And I think AI has the potential to be more of a catalyst for this competitive advantage that I mentioned in the beginning. But it's really important that we focus on our role in that equation. Like, we exist to support others. The University of Washington, our output is our students. It's about research. It's about teaching and learning. And what a privilege to be in our position right now, right here, at the cusp of, I think, something that's going to be transformational and working with our partners in UW Medicine. I know Eric and I talk about, Eric Neal, the CIO for UW Medicine. We talk a lot about what is this going to look like in the future? And Eric Neal, we get very excited talking about the application of AI on the health sector, in particular on the clinical side, just like Todd articulated. But again, what a privilege to work for the University of Washington. What a privilege to work for UW-IT and help realize these really ambitious and I think very compelling goals that we have set for ourselves. Yeah, I'm super excited.
Awesome. All right. At this point, we're going to take a very small number of questions. I'm sure there are plenty. You were first, so we'll take yours, and then I'm going to repeat them back for the remote viewers. So no one really knew the impact of social media, and clearly it's had some downsides and negative impacts on children. And there wasn't a lot of thought of applying psychology and considering those ramifications. This time it's different, right? Because we know this is going to be impactful to parents, to children. And I think the question, if I understood it correctly, is what are we doing about that? How are we thinking about that? Is that in the conversation, in the dialogue, in the task force? Yeah, right. As we fight to keep, right. And my kids, they actually lock the phones in a pouch now all day because they are that distracting and addicted. So,
yeah, great question, and very interesting. And no, we're not doing enough. We need to do more. But I will tell you that there's some interesting things that we've learned already. So I mentioned earlier about this AI that responds back to you when you ask your doctor a question. So they looked at the responses that came from AI versus the responses that came from providers themselves. And 5% of the responses that were provided by providers were felt to be empathetic. 50% of the provider responses from AI were felt to be empathetic. And why is that? Well, it's about the prompt, right? If you control the prompt to drive empathy, then you're going to get a much better performance than what a human, especially a physician, is able to do. What that means, though, is that it is crucial in the design of this that we think about what you're talking about the psychological impacts of things like that. You can imagine an AI tool that's giving you response about how you're doing with your classwork, but somewhere in the prompt it says, be really belligerent about it. Not a great design, right? So I think we really need to think about this.
And I would like to add something more. So this is a great question. And I think this also points to this really crucial need to support research in AI, but across domains, across the entire university. I think for example, for the internet, we have a center called the Center for an Informed Public that is looking at some of the challenges around misinformation online, some of the challenges related to social media, not exactly along kind of what you said, but in a similar vein, not always popular research, but extremely important research. And I think this is going to be the same thing for AI. We need people from the psychology departments, from all of these different units, the College of Education, engaging in this type of research.
All right, we've got time for one more question. So the question for the remote viewers, so AI uses enormous amounts of energy, and the energy consumption is growing exponentially with adoption. And the question, if I can paraphrase it, is how are we making sure that as we embrace this technology and onboard and expand its use, that we are part of the solution and not part of the problem, given that this massive increase in energy usage was not anticipated and not planned for, and that unfortunately some of the added generation are from entities that might not share some of our values about climate and environment. Is that fair? All right.
I think this is a great question, and I'm going to answer only part of that question, which is one part of how we try to address that question is to actually do research in energy efficiency in data centers, in kind of greener AI, in language models that can be smaller but can provide similar quality results. For example, one exciting project out of the Allen Institute of AI, but under the leadership of two of our Allen School faculty members who are duly appointed between the University of Washington and AI2. So this is actually a joint project with AI2, UW, and some other institutions. Is producing an open source language model so that everyone can use the same, can benefit from having one trained model that everyone can study. So those are some of the angles that we're trying to tackle this problem. Actually, how can we get the benefits but with a lower energy footprint?
Yeah, two quick comments on that, and I really appreciate the question. The first is really, we need to have appropriate use of AI, right? So I view this like the gasoline world. We all can't drive Hummers, right? So we need to be responsible about where we're using it and where we don't need to use it, right? That's the first comment. The second is, anybody know what the stock that had the highest percentage rise on the S&P the last year is? NVIDIA, right, the maker of these chips. And people said, well, why didn't you anticipate that? And nobody said, well, we didn't know that if they said the price is going to go up 7 to 8 fold in the price of the chips, they were going to say, sure, let's have more. So it really speaks to the demand for Microsoft and Google and Amazon and all these organizations that are putting up these large AI centers in the cloud to expand this. And I think nobody is looking at the climate impact of that.
Great question. On a personal note, I struggle with that as well from an environmental perspective, because I don't think anyone anticipated the enormous amount of power that is really needed to run these very power-hungry GPUs if you were to boil it down to the consumption level. And I don't think there's an easy answer to that question. There's no silver bullet here that we can use to solve that problem. But I do think what Todd was talking about and Magda in regards to ethical or the appropriate use of AI. And I think the university has such an important role to play in the research of AI to enable that outcome, right? Better chips, lower power consumptions. I mean, look at NVIDIA right now. The H200 came out, right? And that sits at a certain level. Then the H200, and that needs even more power. And I think Blackwell, which is the B200 chip, that curve keeps going up. I think the University of Washington has an opportunity and maybe even a responsibility to work with vendors like that, with our fantastic researchers, to figure out how we can at least tip the needle on that issue. And I want to emphasize that the University of Washington takes environmental stewardship very seriously. We have some very ambitious goals into our own power consumption. And I absolutely think AI will impact that. And that's a conversation that we need to have as a university, because undoubtedly it will have a big impact on our environmental sustainment and longer term plans.
I had one other thought for you, and that is what we're also seeing in the industry, just because the cost of doing these is so high, is that people are taking a step back and saying, do I really need such a broad large language module to answer this question? And can I trim down the model and trim down the amount of GPU cycles, et cetera, that are needed to actually generate an answer and make it more efficient, saving the cost to the end user, but also to what you're speaking about, saving the environmental cost?
All right. That concludes our panel. I want to thank our expert panelists. This was fantastic. Thank you so much.